Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the press conference dedicated to the Russian UNSC presidency in April. Ambassador Nebenzia, you have the floor.
Good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to see you all on the first working day of the Russian presidency in the UN Security Council. Allow me to briefly update you on what we are planning for the month, week by week. At 11:30, we adopted the program for the month of April. That preceded the regular traditional PR breakfast, where we discussed it. So no official meetings are planned for the first week of our presidency. Meanwhile, still on the 5th of April at 10 a.m., we intend to host in our national capacity an area formula meeting entitled Children and Armed Conflict, Ukrainian Crisis, Evacuating Children from Conflict Zones. You know that this issue is being discussed in many fora, including UN, and we want to dispel some misgivings and propaganda over that issue that has been waged by certain countries. We also plan to have 3 long weekends in April because of religious holidays. 7th of April, which is Catholic Good Friday, 14th of April, which is Orthodox Good Friday, and 21st of April, which is Eid al-Fitr. We will resume our official work next week on Monday, April 10th, straight away with our first signature event, open debate on threats to international peace and security, risks stemming from violations of the agreements regulating the export of weapons and military equipment, with USG Izumi Nakamitsu as a briefer. We strongly believe that the topic of the discussion is timely and relevant. We do hope open debate with a broad participation of member states will provide an opportunity to discuss ways to address risks to international peace and security stemming from violations of the agreements and multilateral understandings with regard to regulating export of weapons and military equipment. We expect participants to consider the negative consequences of non-compliance by member states with their obligations in arms and ammunition transfers and identify ways to improve mechanisms for controlling exports of weapons and military equipment. Just for your information, we do not intend to focus the discussion on some specific country or regional context, but rather discuss the issue from an arms control perspective. You will and may have seen it already from the concept note that we circulated this week. No meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, April 11th. On Wednesday, April 12th, we will hold a regular briefing followed by consultations on the situation in Mali and the work of MINUSMA with SRSG El Gassim I, who will represent the SG report. On April 13th, in the morning, we will have a briefing followed by consultations on Colombia with SRSG Carlos Ruiz Massieu as a briefer presenting the SG report as well as the PBC chair. We will resume Security Council activities next week and discuss Yemen on April 17th. We plan to hear the briefings by SRSG Special Envoy Hans Grunberg and OCHA ASG Joyce Msuya. We also expect head of UN mission to support the Hodeida Agreement, General Michael Berry, to participate as per established practice in consultations. On April 18th, we will have a briefing on the work of UNSMIL, Libya, and Libya sanctions, followed by consultations with SRSG Abdoulaye Batili as a briefer and chair of the 1970 Sanctions Committee, Ambassador Kimihiro Ishikane of Japan, presenting the periodic report of the subsidiary body. On April 19, we will have a briefing followed by consultations on Great Lakes region. Special Envoy Juan Xia will present the Secretary General report, and in the case of Colombia, we will have a PBC chair as a briefer. In the afternoon session, the same day, April 19th, we will have consultations on the work of MINURSO, Western Sahara, with the personal envoy of the Secretary General Staffan de Mistura and SRSG Alexander Ivanko as briefers. No meetings are scheduled for April 12th. As announced earlier, we expect Minister Lavrov to arrive in New York later in April. He will be chairing our second signature event on April 24th, which is an open debate on maintenance of international peace and security, effective multilateralism through the defense of the principles of the UN Charter. The Secretary General has confirmed his participation as a briefer. We plan to have a comprehensive and strategic forward-looking discussion on the formation of a new multipolar world order based on sovereign equality, equal rights and self-determination, justice and security, friendly relations, cooperation between nations, with full respect of the purposes and principles of the UN Charter. Where the UN is able to act as a central mechanism for coordinating the interests of member states and their actions to achieve the goals of the UN Charter. We encourage member states to consider ways how we can build a truly multipolar world while maintaining the global balance of power and ensuring the conditions for humanity's steady advance based on a unifying and constructive agenda. Minister Lavrov will also chair the open debate on the Middle East on the 25th of April, with Special Coordinator Tur Venesland as a briefer. The meeting will provide us with a good opportunity to discuss a complex dynamics in the region, focusing first on the stagnation of the Palestinian-Israeli settlement and escalation of tensions. On April 26th in the morning, we will hold briefing and consultations on Haiti with SRSG Maria Isabel Salvador, who will present the SG report. And I understand that will be her first briefing for the Security Council. The UNODC Director, Gada Fatih Vali, is also expected to brief. This is beyond the Security Council official program of work, but I would like to mention this for scheduling purposes. On April 26th in the afternoon, we intend to convene a bi-monthly informal interactive dialogue on humanitarian situation in Syria. Also on Syria, on April 27th, we will have a combined discussion on both Syria political and humanitarian files in briefing and consultations. We expect Special Envoy Geir Pedersen and OCHA USG Martin Griffiths to brief the Council and to present the SG report. In the afternoon session, we will have a briefing on Kosovo with the SRSG Caroline Ziade briefing the Council and presenting a periodic report on the work of UNMIK. As for the informal wrap-up, we are thinking of April 28th. We will confirm the date in a later stage, and I think that will be also a date when we'll have an opportunity to meet with you again, besides the regular stakeouts that I pledge I will try to adhere to. So that's for the briefing. Now I'm ready to answer your questions if you have any.
First
Although
question goes
I already briefed you on anything that
First question goes to the head of ANCA.
Thank you, Fedor. Thank you, Ambassador, on behalf of ANCA for this press conference. Valeria Robecco from ANSA News Agency. I actually have two questions. The first one is, what is your comment to those who suggest that Russia should not be president of the Security Council because of the war in Ukraine? And the second one is, we're seeing the succession of several European leaders to China to visit President Xi. Do you think it can be a useful path to find a path through the negotiation table? And here,
Can you have the second question starting from the beginning?
There are several European leaders, starting with President Macron, going to China to see President Xi. Do you think it can be useful to find a path through the negotiating table in Ukraine? And China, do you think it can play a key role even here at the UN to facilitate a negotiation and a solution to the conflict? Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Valeria. On the first question, we hear these comments, of course. Some countries are pretending they can decide at their own will who they want or do not want to be in the chair of the presidency of the Security Council. As long as the current world order with the UN and the Security Council stance, there will be no change in the rules of procedure. And the order presidency of the president is well defined. It's not for them to change it. I heard also comments on that Russia should be an honest broker in the presidency of the Security Council. I think that nobody could reproach us that we were not one when we were in the presidency, which can easily be checked. Unlike some countries who come up with such claims, who are not always honest brokers. I'm not even talking about the comment of the US PR, whose presidency in the Security Council, and I recognize it when they were, was professional. But some of their predecessors, I would say, didn't do likewise, and they played with the rules and procedures of the Security Council and basically trampled the Council's rules and procedures. I also heard comments from an outstanding and chief European diplomat, Josep Borrell, who recently distinguished himself with comments that and statements that made him a truly international star, invoking the 1st of April Fool's Day. To that I will not comment much. I will only ask a rhetorical question: who's talking?
China?
No, China. Yeah. The second question.
I didn't answer your second question. I'll come to
Yeah. James.
Okay, a quick follow-up if I can. You said you're going to follow the rules and procedures. You're well aware of the provisional rules of procedure of the Security Council, better than me. Rule 20 says during the consideration of a particular question with which the member he represents is directly connected, he shall indicate his decision to the Council to recuse yourself, basically, if that particular issue is something that you're directly involved in. And it's up to you as the President to decide that. So if the issue of Ukraine comes up this month, there's the provision for you then to hand the presidency for that subject over to Switzerland.
No. No.
Why not?
If you put the question this way, then I think a few other countries that are on the Security Council should also withdraw from that discussion, and namely 3 members of the P5 who are directly involved in the situation which you are alluding to. Secondly, I would like to remind that in 2003, both UK and US were presidents of the Security Council in September and October consecutively. Nobody raised the question of their legitimacy to hold the presidency, and nobody put on the table the question that they withdraw from discussing issues, an issue that was perhaps the most hot and topical then. Now, coming back to what Valery asked me about China, I wish it could be the case, but I have strong doubts that the European leaders, with their position on the Ukrainian crisis, could come to anything sensible and meaningful when they visit China. We more or less know their rhetoric and narrative, what they will say and what they will demand from President Xi. And I think that Chinese balanced position on the issue will not allow them to go from Beijing with what they consider, in their view, tangible.
Thanks, Ambassador. Regarding your ARIA meeting on Wednesday, you've already said to us that this isn't intended to be a defence of President Putin's...
No, I didn't say that.
No, I'm saying you've already said it's not intended to be a defence of President Putin's ICC arrest warrant. Can you tell us who will be briefing on Wednesday? And then regarding the Ukraine grain deal, you said in an interview with TASS on Friday that you expect concrete results by May 18. And if that doesn't happen, the UN will have to acknowledge a few things about Western sanctions and the effect of that.
May 18th?
Yeah.
What comes May 18th?
You said you expect, on the Ukraine grain deal,
A grain deal, yeah.
yeah, sorry, you expect concrete results by May 18 is what you told TASS. And then you said if you don't get that, the UN will have to acknowledge some certain things about Western sanctions. But you didn't say that Russia would withdraw from the deal. So if May 18 comes around and Russia doesn't get what it wants, will the deal continue?
It's not me who decides, as you understand. We've been saying consistently that the deal is not working. The second part of the deal, which concerns the Russian export of food and fertilizers, is not working. Is not working 100%, despite all the efforts Secretary General and Rebecca Greenspan are undertaking, and we recognize these efforts. But we are where we are. And what will happen in 60 days, where we said that we expect the breakthrough. I cannot predict. As I said, it's not my prerogative to give you even heads up on that. But let's see what happens on the 18th of May and what progress we could achieve by that date. On area formula, you will learn the name of the briefers very shortly. Today, I think, in the second part of the day, because it's being coordinated with Moscow and will come with the final list shortly.
And have you received any pushback from any of your colleagues on the Security Council regarding your ARIA?
Not really. Look, area formula meetings are meetings which provide for the participation of all council members. If we see somebody is missing, of course we will do likewise when they have their own area formula meeting on whatever topic. We participate in every area formula meeting that our colleagues who are not, especially those who are not in agreement with us on many issues, are conducting, and we never miss any unless they make the first move.
Thank you, Fedor, and thank you, Ambassador. It's Pamela Falk from CBS News. One question and then a follow-up. There's a great deal of concern about the arrest of American Wall Street Journal journalist Evan Gershkovich. And we'd like to hear from you about what you think in terms of responding to U.S. and many journalist organizations' requests to release him. And then the second question is just, since your foreign minister will be coming at the 25th, 26th,
24th, 25th.
24th, 25th, end of April, do you expect any kind of possible or a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Blinken, as they both did as a pull aside in early March in India? Thank you.
I think that depends on two factors. First, where Blinken will be at that time, Secretary Blinken, and on his ability and willingness to meet with our foreign minister. We never, ever, and we stated it numerous times that we are not running away from whatever meetings with those people who want these meetings. If Secretary Blinken would like to have a meeting, of course the space will be provided. If he doesn't, then it's irrelevant.
Foreign Minister Lavrov would want one if it's possible.
Well, if such meeting is requested, I presume that Minister Lavrov will be ready to meet Secretary Blinken. But for that, we need at least one condition: a willingness to meet.
And now, Mr. Gershkovich?
Yeah. On Gershkovich, I'm not an investigative body, that we, believe it or not, but we have the division of powers in Russia. He was arrested on charges of espionage. The investigation is going on. We hear statements coming from the West. Today, Secretary Blinken talked to Minister Lavrov on that issue. But that will be decided not by Minister Lavrov or Secretary Blinken, but by investigation and by the evidence that the investigation could provide for the court. That's all I can say on this. On the same topic, I would like to say that yesterday there was an assassination of a Russian blogger and journalist whose nickname is Tatarsky. His real name is Fomin. The suspect was apprehended and she basically pleaded guilty. No reaction we heard from the international community or from the UN or journalist organizations on that crime. So we still consider that to be a little bit, not a little bit, but to a large extent selective when assessing what happened to journalists here and there, so to say. Sorry?
We've all covered that story.
I appreciate it, but not a single word from those organizations that should have commented on it, and they would have commented on it if it were not a Russian journalist.
Thank you, Fedor, and thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. A couple of follow-ups to what you've said. On Evan Gershkovich, Russian authorities that said that they caught him red-handed. Can you show the world the evidence that Evan was providing information to a government rather than publishing it in articles in the Wall Street Journal as any journalist would do? And apparently he has not been granted consular access and a visit with his lawyers. Why is the Russian government refusing to do that? Secondly, a follow-up on what you just said about the assassination of the Russian blogger. You said that the suspect was apprehended and she pleaded guilty. Did she appear in court?
No, perhaps legally that's not the correct phrase. You plead guilty in the court, of course. But
Yes, right.
But she basically confirmed that it was her who brought the explosive device to the cafe where there was the public was and the victim was.
And did she know that it was an explosive device?
That we have the authorities that do investigation have to find out.
And just a third follow-up on your presidency. The U.S. ambassador told us this morning that she expects the Russian presidency to be professional, but she also said that the U.S. expects Russia to be spreading disinformation about Ukraine. Could you respond to that? Thank you.
I would agree with the first part of that statement. I think Linda was correct, and I hope that was not a question, but a statement that she expects us to act professionally as presidency of the Security Council, which she had a chance to get assured when we were presidents last time, and that was her first presidency with us in the seat of the chair of the Security Council. So I will not disappoint you on that. On the second part, that we are spreading will be spreading, using the presidency to spread disinformation about Ukraine. That's a statement that that is in vein of the Western narrative that Russia is doing nothing but spreading disinformation about Ukraine. In fact, we think just the opposite. And one of the disinformation that the Western media and Western officials are spreading is the situation of Ukrainian children who were allegedly kidnapped from Ukraine and brought to Russia against their will. And this is just one aspect. But the Area Formula meeting, which I hope you will follow, is intended to dispel this narrative and the so-called Russian disinformation on that issue. There are many others, of course, but I will not stop here to cite all of them. On Gershkovich, you said, could you provide evidence? No, I can't, because I'm not an investigative body, and I do not have information on the details that and the essence of accusations that he was accused of. Consular access, I think that according to consular and diplomatic traditions, it will be provided, but at what stage and when, I also have no idea. That is for the authorities in Moscow to decide. You asked also on the assassination, right?
Yeah, and you answered that.
Okay.
Me. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Susan Tehrani from WION, India. Russian lawmakers said recently that BRIC nations are in the process. Russian lawmakers recently said that BRIC nations are in the process of creating a new payment established on a strategy that does not defend the dollar or the euro. And I was wondering if you could confirm that, if you have talked about this with your BRIC colleagues here at the UN. And it was interesting because this news just came days before South Africa sent senior officials to Russia to quote unquote recalibrate the global order. Can you talk about this recalibration of global order that we hear from Russia so often these days? Thank you.
We've been talking about the need to delink us from the dependence on dollar and other foreign Western currencies, long time. And that is not just an issue for Russia, but for many other countries, because you know what happens after EU, US, and some other countries introduced how they call it, health sanctions against Russia. It didn't help them much, but it tells us that they are not reliable. Their financial system is not something that we can rely upon, knowing that they at any time they can switch off or rather swift off the international payment system, that dollar transactions are not reliable anymore. They sanctioned the dollar itself because now the dollar cannot travel to Russia officially. So we have to find ways how to move to a new system of exchanges with countries that are friendly to us, and we need to find. This trend has started not with 22nd of February 2022. We've been speaking that we need to de-dollarize the world economy before it, and we want to involve local currencies, countries' currencies more within the trade with Russia. We do it successfully with China, with other countries. We need to come off that narcotic needle that the dollar represents. South Africa senior officials coming to Moscow to discuss the new configuration of the world order. That dialogue goes long time already. Now it intensified with the current events, and BRICS, which South Africa is a member of, is an active participant in these discussions. And of course, BRICS countries like China, South Africa, Brazil, India are elements of this new world polycentric order that is emerging. So I see nothing criminal or suspicious in South Africans traveling to Moscow to discuss this issue. We discuss these issues with the BRICS countries and within the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in other formats regularly.
Thank you, Fedor. Ambassador, this is Deji Xu with China Central Television. 2 quick questions. Now, actually, many media outlets already started suspected that Russia is going to abuse the presidency of the Security Council. Any response? And we know that a large portion of the council members, they are in one way or another against Russia Federation. In this way, how would you expect to work with them to maintain peace and stability with the what I called mission impossible, which is to show the solidarity and the unity of the council? Thank you.
There were many articles on that issue. Before our presidency, at a certain point, you remember there was a debate within the Western media and among some Western leaders trying to question our membership in the Security Council and our status as the permanent member. I already answered partly that question, saying that as long as the current world order stays, and the current world order is based on the UN Charter, where it says unequivocally how the UN is organized, including the Security Council, nothing will change. It will still be the same. I think that these articles and these opinions are rather a gesture of despair, rather than something serious and tangible which can affect our work in the Security Council. On our role in the Security Council, as I said, I don't think a single country, and we've heard that even after February, when we were presidents, when the event started, who thanked us at that time for the professional presidency that we demonstrated. We do not abuse the prerogatives of the presidency. One thing is the national position. The second thing is the role of the presidency of the Security Council, which we value and cherish, and we're always trying to maintain it. I remember my first presidency in the Council, which came on the 1st of July 2018. Which coincided with the last veto of US in the Security Council. That was Nikki Haley, who was PR at that time. And we were in the consultations room. And there was a procedural issue because at that time US wanted to make an amendment to a resolution on Palestine that was under discussion with its own resolution, as if an amendment, to which I told them, look, I do not want to go into the UK book on the proceedings of the Security Council. I'm sure many of you are aware what it is. Very useful reference. On the first day of my presidency, I hate to think about it. So let's behave professionally. So we did, and that simply testifies that we do not abuse the work of the Security Council. Whoever says it is in the least biased. You said that many of our colleagues in the Security Council will be working against Russia. I do not think that will be the case. Today's PR breakfast demonstrated that they are already to go along, and besides, the Security Council is not composed of the P3 and a few other countries that might have such thoughts, which they never betrayed, at least today, and I'm sure they will during our presidency. Let's see at the final press conference after the presidency where you were right or wrong.
Thank you, Fedor. Hi, Ambassador Nebenzia, Carrie Norton from Le Monde. I have two questions. I totally understand your point as the rule of the UN and the monthly presidency, but as you're attached to the credibility of the UN and the values, can you understand normal citizens feel offended that a country can chair the Security Council when its leader is under arrest warrant by the ICC, which is the highest judicial organ of the UN? That's my first question. My second question, you have a lot of issues this month that you're going to review, MINUSMA, UNSMIL, MINURSO. Are there any one where you think there will be any breakthrough? And if so, which one?
You mentioned MINURSA.
There's a lot. There's MINUSMA, UNSMIL, MINURSO. My question is like, what is the most important for you? Do you think there's going to be a breakthrough on one of them?
All files on the Security Council are important to us, but I do not want to make too optimistic statements. I do not expect any breakthroughs on these files, but hopefully, gradually, we will be trying to achieve progress on them. On the credibility and normal citizens, which normal citizens you mean? There are citizens, and they take situation not as they do
Ambassador Nebenzia,
in the Western Europe, and even in the Western Europe, even here in the US. Even here in the US, there are various opinions on the issue, and they are not as straightforward as you mentioned. Now, you said that the International Criminal Court is a part of the International Criminal Court is not the part of the UN. That's point one. Sorry. I want to make it very clear.
Sorry.
Secondly, I commented on the decision of the International Criminal Court. Besides being stupid, let's put things straight. That is also an illegitimate decision, means nothing to us. And I think that those that encouraged that decision, perhaps they already regret they did it. Because, as I said, what they did, it doesn't make us closer to any resolution of the current crisis we are living in. So, on the credibility, that's a debatable question, at least.
Thanks, Ambassador. Here. Betül with the Turkish news agency Anadolu. The Turkish president recently said that President Putin may visit Turkey on April 27th for the inauguration of Turkey's first nuclear power reactor, which was built by a Russian nuclear energy company, Rosatom. Has President Putin received an invitation? If so, does he plan to travel to Turkey? Thank you.
That is a question that should be addressed to the presidential administration. I don't know about my president's plans to travel. Well, if President Putin respects President Erdogan and vice versa, as you are very well aware, so I do not exclude it, but I cannot comment on behalf of the president.
Have you heard anything regarding this visit?
Not yet.
Volodymyr Ilchenko, National News Agency of Ukraine, Ukrinform. I am sure you know the history, sir. You know very well that Russia is on the UN Security Council, as well as in the UN as a whole, illegally. Doesn't Russia want to start the process of legalizing its membership in the UN, as all the other newly formed countries did after the former Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, and the Soviet Union ceased to exist? Thank you.
Thank you. You know pretty well that the story is not what our Ukrainian colleagues in the council, in the mission, are trying to tell us. The story is different, and the seat of the Russian Federation in the Security Council is fully legitimate. We received it after we were recognized as continuators of the Soviet Union, with all the legal name that and obligations that come after it. There was an agreement by all the former members of the Soviet Union, including Ukraine, for that. So you might have noticed that this issue that was sort of hot at a certain point was somehow somehow subsided recently. Nobody is actively raising it because they understand that this is a dead-end road.
Thank you, Ambassador. Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York. Ambassador, we just found out from the spokesperson for the Secretary General that Guterres' plan, actually, when your Foreign Minister Lavrov comes here, to sit down with him. So my question is, what Guterres should say or should propose, should come with something new, so we get closer to peace? And then I have another question, very quick. Many people, including me, in the last months, had nightmares sometimes about nuclear war. Did you have any nightmare lately about that?
On the first question, I feel a bit. I find it a little bit strange you're addressing a question on what Antonio Guterres has to say to Minister Lavrov. You're seeking that from me. Perhaps you could have asked Stefan or SG himself what he's going to come up forward with. SG was saying, as far as I know, all the time that he would welcome any initiatives that would lead to peace. Secondly, he is ready to facilitate if he is being asked for. So I don't think that he has a particular plan to offer to Minister Lavrov. If that is not the case, let's see when they meet. I'd be happy if he could come with something tangible and realistic, but I have not heard of any plans by the Secretary General that are being discussed or prepared within the Secretariat or within his office. On the nuclear war, I sleep well because I know that at least us, we are not asking for the nuclear war. We are not threatening nuclear war. All this narrative that Russia is threatening the world with the nukes is a part of a propaganda as well. We've been saying long time consistently that it is not in our military doctrine, which provides for very few specific cases when the nuclear weapons can be engaged. And that is definitely not the situation which is in our nuclear doctrine.
Ambassador, would you allow me just a very quick follow-up on Guterres for your answer? Do you think that Guterres in the last months has been fully, and I would say also in an assertive way, follow his mission as a Secretary General of United Nations, or you should have done for Russia, should have done more for trying to find a way for peace?
The question whether he followed his duties as the Secretary General of the United Nations is a little bit provocative, because whatever I answered would be used against me, as they say when a person is arrested. But the Secretary General is instrumental in promoting the Black Sea Initiative, which we recognize. At the same time, the Black Sea Initiative is clearly one-sided, not because of his fault, but because our Western colleagues claiming that Russian food experts and fertilizer experts are not under sanctions are doing their utmost to block them, basically, which is not in the interests of the countries, including the Western countries, and in particular developing, who are mostly in need of those fertilizers, which might affect the future harvest. That is perhaps the main mission where the Secretary General engaged on Ukraine. Besides that situation in Mariupol, which happened already some time ago, where he was also engaged with, that's basically it. The rest I cannot provide you with any information on what who he could do. Again, I said that he offered his good offices when they are required, and that's where we stand at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Abdel Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. I normally ask you about Palestine, but this time I ask you two different questions. One on sports and one on Syria. On sports, the FIFA debated the participation of Russian soccer teams around the world, and they put conditions on Russia to participate under a neutral flag. 40 members of FIFA said we want to boycott Russian teams, and they lifted up to Paris to invite Russia for the Olympic in 2024. However, the same standard did not apply to Indonesia. When Indonesia said, I don't want to receive Israel, immediately it was canceled, and they pulled out the games for under 20. So is there more hypocrisy than that? I want you to address this. And the second, on Syria, Israel almost on daily basis bombed some areas in Syria. 15 Syrians or their friends killed in Kufr Susa. They bombed Aleppo airport, and it was went out of service. Same thing with Damascus airport. And almost on every day there is some kind of Israeli raids in Syria. However, Russia is in almost, at least we say, control of the space. They have the radar, they have the capacity. What do you tell the Israeli? You have good friendship with Israel, you have good relations. Why you don't tell them stop bombing Syria?
We tell them stop bombing Syria,
but they don't
including
listen.
In the Security Council. Of course, that is inadmissible, what they're doing. They're claiming that they are bombing the Iranian presence in Syria, like the US does, by the way. I recall the recent briefing of deputy spokesperson of the UN, who was unable to answer about the Syrian the US presence in Syria. That was, how would I put it diplomatically? I'd better refrain from commenting. I think you heard it all yourselves. We do, but unfortunately, this is a long-time Israeli practice. And that does not just concern Syria alone, but Lebanon as well, and other states which Israel considers to be its immediate danger. As I said, that's inadmissible. That's not only us who speak about it, but we speak perhaps most vocally. On sports, recently, well, you asked about hypocrisy. There is a lot of hypocrisy in this world and a lot of double standards. But I was struck by a comment made by the chair of the International Olympic Committee, Thomas Bach, recently, who said a few things on the Paris Olympics. First, no Russian teams are allowed to participate, whatever they are. Team sports are prohibited. Secondly, athletes who not associate, but who support the Russian military operation are prohibited to participate. Besides being the witch hunt, I have a question: how they will be singling out those athletes that support or do not support military operation. Somebody was saying to me, you have a sports club which is called CSKA, which is the Central Sports Club of the Army. And indeed, when it was established long time ago, it was the Army Club in the Soviet times. Today, it's a commercial enterprise, just bearing the same name. So, is it the criteria? What is the criteria? That looks miserable, frankly. The way the Olympic Committee, FIFA, I don't think they make a condition on wearing or non-wearing the insignia, the emblems or whatever. I think that they simply exclude, at least UEFA excluded us from the international competitions. On FIFA and on the future World Cup, they excluded that from this one. What will happen to the next, I don't know. But I don't think they condition it on a neutral status. I haven't heard about it, at least.
Thank you. It was for me. Okay. Hi, my name is Ibtisam Azem, Al Arabi Al Jadid newspaper. I have first a quick follow-up on the Russian fertilizers. You said that you hope that there will be a breakthrough. Could you please elaborate what does a breakthrough for you mean? And then my questions, one about Western Sahara, whether you met with Mr. de Mistura, if you could shed more lights on that. And my last question is in Syria and the issue of, as you know, the Secretary General suggested establishing a mechanism for the forcibly disappeared. And there was, in Syria, and there was a meeting last week, I think, in the General Assembly, and your country opposed such a mechanism. But a lot of families of people who forcibly disappeared, whether their loved one were disappeared in the regime prisons or the opposition, are saying that they are not getting information, their life is put on hold, and they are asking for such a mechanism. And the UN is saying that this is a humanitarian mechanism and not a political. So what do you say to these families who cannot even have paper issued about their inheritance or about travel or register their children all over Syria and all the different places? Thank you very much.
On fertilizers, what will be a breakthrough? A breakthrough will be the implementation of the second part of the deal, which has not been implemented since the beginning, since the 22nd of July, and now more than 8 months that nothing was happening, despite all the efforts. So that'll be the breakthrough. De Mistura, Staffan is briefing the Council later in April, and he will be, I know that he's thinking about something, which he does not betray. Let's hear him at the Council, him and the chief of SRSG, Ivankov Minurso. I cannot provide you with anything of a breakthrough here because we don't know what the plan of the personal envoy is and what the reaction of the Council will be. On the mechanism on forcibly disappeared, you said that it is strictly humanitarian. Nothing is strictly humanitarian about Syria. It's as political as this independent how do you call it, Triple IM, the independent impartial and whatever mechanism on Syria, which proved to be as independent as it can be. I think that the same will happen to this mechanism as well. It will be another instrument and element for political pressure on Syria. You cannot create a mechanism on something that happens in the country without the consent of the country concerned. That's the principle that works everywhere, only with the exception for a few countries, Syria included. So we've been here for an hour. What do you think? It's time for lunch.
A couple of last questions.
Joseph Klein of Canada Free Press. This is a two-part question relating to North Korea. In your national capacity, can you either confirm or deny recent reports that Russia is considering a trade with North Korea in which North Korea would send arms to Russia in exchange for food? And in your capacity as President of the Security Council this month, how would you evaluate such an exchange under existing Security Council resolutions? Thank you.
What a question. What an exchange is my question. I mean, we have reports in the press which were never verified. These are at present allegations, not something that we can discuss as a done deal. We have a committee, sanctions committee on North Korea, and a group of experts that is to investigate these things. So far, these are allegations, so I don't know what to comment on.
Thank you, Ambassador. Just a couple of follow-ups, really, on the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Okay, so you're saying nothing is happening despite efforts. So what is your benchmark to say that the MOU is working for you? It certainly can't be 100% of your pre-war food and fertilizer exports, because even Ukraine isn't achieving that with their end of the deal. So just give us a tangible, concrete number, because it's really very unclear what you expect. And then also just a second follow-up, sorry, on Secretary Blinken. You said he has to ask Lavrov for a meeting or request a meeting. Does that mean Minister Lavrov would have no interest in meeting with Mr. Blinken of his own initiative?
I didn't say that Secretary Blinken has to ask Minister Lavrov about a meeting. I said that if there is a willingness to meet and we know about it, I'm sure that Minister Lavrov will never reject such a meeting.
About willingness from your side.
Sorry?
But what about willingness from your side? Why couldn't you initiate
Look,
it?
I will invoke and refer to one situation during the last high-level debate, when there should have been a regular meeting of the P5 with the Secretary General, a traditional meeting that happens every GA. And at that time, I think US was the coordinator. And I must tell you that in the P5, there was one country that was strongly for that meeting. There were two countries, I'm sure you can easily guess, that one country, US, initially said that they might consider it, but then withdrew. There was one country that was against that meeting. We were not insisting. It's a tradition, not an obligation, and the meeting didn't take place. That means, and then we heard numerous comments from the US officials that it is beyond their dignity to meet the Russian officials. So in these circumstances, do you expect us to beg Secretary Blinken for a meeting? If he asks for a meeting for whatever reason, I will not speak for Minister Lavrov, but I knowing him a little bit, I'm sure that he will not refuse such meetings. But otherwise, what's the point? You asked about the benchmarks for the Black Sea initiative to work. I said earlier that we have not a single grain exported according to the memorandum of Russia and UN, the second part of the deal. We had fertilizers that were arrested in some European ports, Baltics and I think Belgium and Netherlands, at least one of them, that we offered to deliver to the developing countries who need them free of charge. Out of the total number, which amounts to nearly 300,000 tons of fertilizers, only 30,000 tons were exported or rather evacuated from one of those ports. Still are on the way to the country that requested these fertilizers to be delivered. So these are mere facts, which say how the grain deal, or rather the Black Sea Initiative, is working or rather not working. I really thank you for your time, and I didn't want to steal your lunch. And I will see you often this month, and we will do a wrap-up. I will try to do a wrap-up with you like I will do with the member states as well. Come to the stakeout. I'll do my best.